Hello, 你好. Welcome to Mandarin Mama Chitchat. It is where Trista and Yao Yao, two Taiwanese moms, share intriguing conversations with amazing people from all over the world. We're super excited and grateful to have you here, and really hope you enjoy our chit-chat.
Hi, welcome back to Mandarin Mama Chitchat. Your time is so valuable. I'm so glad you are here spending your valuable time with us. Thank you so much for being here. I want to make sure you subscribe to our podcast because we will have a new episode every week with amazing guests and I don't want you to miss it. So make sure you subscribe, you'll get notification. I also want you to go to our show notes after this episode and sign up for our newsletter. If you haven't signed up, make sure you sign up because you will get a new worksheet every month. Every month, Trista and I will have a special worksheet, something fun, Mandarin related. We will be sending it to you guys in the beginning of the month. So make sure you go to our show notes, find the link for subscribe to our newsletter. Today we have Helen from Curious Little Bao. She's a self-publishing author. Another amazing mama start a publishing journey from scratch. Helen used to work in the healthcare professional field, and she became a stay-at-home mom when she was looking for bilingual books. She doesn't see much of representation of Asian boys, and she has two boys. So she thought, maybe I can make some bilingual board book myself, and that can represent my son. That's when Little Bao, 小宝, came about. Helen shared her journey being a stay-at-home mom and taking care of the babies in the morning and just sleepless night, right? Working on her passion project at night. I love her energy and I love her positive attitude. She knows what she wants. She knows what's her priority and she loves what she's doing. And one big takeaway I learned from Helen and many mommy authors, it's like a force. It's literally a mom force. Helen shared she's not alone in this journey because she started this from scratch. By herself, yes, but there are so many other moms that actually paved the way for her, helped her along the way. And we talk about this in our conversation. Isn't it interesting when you think about it? We don't see each other as a competition. Like, wait a minute, I'm doing bilingual board books and you're going to ask me for advice and you're going to have your own bilingual board books and take my customer? No. It didn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, right? Everyone is like, oh, let me show you the way. This is where you go. This is where you can avoid mistakes. Like literally helping each other out. And it was so touched. This is what's happening in this behind the scene. And I think that should happen more often. Woman helping another woman, mom helping another mom. The market is so big. And you might like me because we connect, because I have the same energy that you're looking for. And some people might hate me. They cannot stand my voice and they just think I'm like the most annoying person ever on earth. And that's okay because we have our free will, right? We can pick and choose. And I share in our conversation, if this whole wide world, we only have one type of cupcake, how boring it is. I want variety. I like crave cupcakes. Sometimes I like sweet. There's a brand called Sweet Cupcake. I live in Houston, right? Sometimes I like Tiff's Treat. Sometimes I go to Crumble. Like I want different type of chocolate chips cookie. I don't want one type. Why is there different cupcakes and cookie company every corner in our neighborhood? Well, maybe not every corner, but very close by. Like every few miles, you'll see like a cookie place or a cupcake place. Because we help each other grow, we help each other become better. And because the market is great and we can have choice, we get to pick what we like. Not everybody's gonna like you, but you're gonna find your tribe. Whatever you are doing, if you have a if you have a podcast, if you have Instagram, if you're an influencer, you have a business, you're selling a product, it doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna find your people and not everybody gonna like you, and that is okay. We have to learn to live with that. All right, sorry of my rambling. I love you guys. Let's welcome Helen.
Hi, Helen. Thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I already have a feeling it's just gonna be an inspiring and fun chat with you. I can feel the energy already. I'm excited. And I actually looked you up on the Instagram and your website. You have 3 books already, 3 bilingual books, and then one I think is more like a coloring, like a water book that you just started on your own. I cannot wait to hear your journey, your story. Like what got you into publishing these books. I know it's not easy, and you probably did it from scratch too. Because we've been hearing a lot of you. I know you're another like Wonder Woman, because we've been hearing a lot of these Wonder Woman story, Wonder Mama. So
Yeah, I think
take the stage. Tell us.
Oh, no, thanks. I think definitely a lot of our fellow mom authors, what I've come to realize on this journey is that we all somehow got inspired by the same reason, which is our kids, right? I think once we become moms, we realize in our journey to educate our kids that some things are missing, and in an effort and frustration of not being able to find them, we decide to create our own. It sounds so courageous and like woo, but at the same time it's like it's almost, to me, it's like it's simple, right? If you can try to make it happen, if you're passionate about it, then go for it and try it, right? What's the worst that can happen? And I think that's
Love
kind
that
of how,
attitude.
yeah, that's kind of how it went about, really. So it's funny that today we're talking because on Facebook it reminded me exactly 2 years ago today I launched my first Kickstarter for the first book. I know, I was like, whoa, what are our chances? Yeah.
Oh, it's meant
So
to be.
yeah,
Congratulations. 2 years
Three-year
anniversary.
anniversary.
I know, right? It's like it's meant to be today to talk about this stuff, right? Yeah. So a really long time ago, 2 years ago, when my first kid was about 2, I was looking for books that talked about toddlers' mannerisms, behaviors, or social skills, things like helping around the house, just skills that you want them to learn, not just necessarily as they get older, but especially starting from young. And then I wanted to make sure they were taught in Chinese. So at home, we only speak Mandarin so that my kids can hopefully be immersed in that environment. And then, because I figure once they go to school, English will not take over, but English will be predominantly, the language that they hear a lot. So I want to make sure they can get enough Chinese in there early on as much as possible to set a good foundation. Yeah, so that's how I decided to do my books. And then I had actually asked Biddy Bao Lacey a lot about creating books. And I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, this whole mama making book journey, a huge part of it is finding other moms who are creating these books and then realizing how helpful and how on the same energy level they are in terms of supporting each other and creating things.
And I have to say, I have to add, isn't it interesting how you guys and all this mom, you don't see each other like as a competition, like, oh, Helen is going to do bilingual books, like just like me, like, I'm not going to share any tips. Like, it's the opposite. It's like all of you guys, like all the other like moms are like, let's do this together. Let's help out each other. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was one of the hugest thing that I was surprised by as well in the beginning, right? I initially talked to Hannah from Happy just because I was helping her with some of the stuff. And then I mentioned to her that I had this idea of creating more books. And then she said, why don't you talk to Lacey from Billy Bell? And in my mind, I had what you were thinking about, which is, but then she's selling kind of the same to the same audience, right? Like, would she feel comfortable sharing her learned skills with me? But I was completely surprised and floored by how friendly Lacey was and how much she shared with me. And, one of the things she said, I don't know, just paraphrasing what she said, but one of the things she said was that there's such a huge market and such a deficit in amount of good material out there that it's not a competition. It's really anyone, the more you can contribute, the better, because it's all together for the same good, which is our kids, and having more material for them to look at, get them interested in learning and get them interested in being bilingual. That's what's important. And I think, that really resonated with me. And I try to do the same with fellow moms who are interested in creating books and come up and ask me, then I share the same thing I would. Right? So I think that's really what it is at the end of the day, creating things for all our kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a, like you said, it's a ripple effect. Lacey was helping you, and now you're helping other mom, and I'm sure the other moms are helping. You're right. It's just
Exactly.
So there are 3 books that have been published already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you share with us these 3 books, and then how, when it first started, what gave you the ideas? I mean, you said Mandarism and then all the other things that you couldn't find resources for your own
Right.
child. But then what about the later 2 and the transformation, and I guess I'm sure the growth, like in you as well? Could you share with us that?
Yeah. So the first one I have to like to help. So that was the first one about Curious Little Bao likes to help. And that first one, it's funny that you said, like, what's the difference between kind of the first and later on? When I first thought about creating books, I had like a million different ideas in my head and a million different themes to cover. But I guess if I had to say, having the first book was really kind of testing the water and getting validation that the market does need this type of book. And then running that Kickstarter and deciding to run a Kickstarter was my safety net in a way to see, like, okay, if I run a Kickstarter and it's successful, then it means my ideas are at least good enough that this amount of people want it and they can really help these families, right? And then having a successful campaign, the first one, felt like, oh, okay, my idea is not crazy and other people do want these and they can help them. And hearing the good feedback and how their kids are loving it and actually retaining the message and telling other people like, oh, 我是个好帮手, or I'm a good helper, and actually really practicing it really kind of made me feel confident about creating more. So then I decided in the next year to create 2 more on themes that I had already in mind, but I just didn't write out the script. And then eventually write out the script and then did that. And then on that topic, I actually have 3 more coming out this year on more things that are in the same category of teaching toddlers those type of skills, but just a different topic. Just keeps growing. And I think, it's funny, I keep bringing Lacey up, but Lacey was saying it's like an addicting game because once you start, you can't stop.
ideas.
Yeah, you just want to make more and more and more. It just becomes more fun. And it's, it is.
Right, easier too, right?
Wrong.
I mean, I'm not saying it's an easy task, but now that you are in the game and then you're more experienced and learn so much along the way. So like, I'm sure the first production probably take a lot longer. Like the first book probably took a lot longer than your second and third book.
Yeah. And in that line of thing, right? Since like Yaya was saying earlier, I used to be a healthcare consultant. So I do a lot of like PowerPoints and things like that, but I've never touched Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator or any of that. So a lot of that was late night learning on my own, watching YouTube and trying to figure it out. And so the first book for sure took a lot of effort trying to figure out how to format a book because I didn't even hire an editor just because like one of those late night projects that I figured why not just try to learn something new, right? So that one took a lot of time. But once the first book was set up and I figured out how to maneuver things, whether it is the right way to do it or just patching things and making it worked. And so in the second and third book, just plotting things back in the same place made the process a lot easier and move a lot faster. But the changing factor is that I am creating more books and then the quantity changes. So then figuring out and feeling confident that these books will also, be received well is always like, ooh, I don't know, but let's put it out there. Yeah. I think the confidence level go up and it also goes down. It's like a roller coaster. This journey. Yeah,
I think that's the nature of starting your own business, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you still work full time, or this is like a passion thing you do on the side, or you're?
Yeah, this is more of a passion thing on the side. I do it because the only time I get to do it is late at night when the kids are asleep. During the day, my job is watching the kids. So yeah, I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom, which also another thing that I never imagined I'd be doing, just like publishing books. When I was a consultant and I got pregnant, I stopped working, and then it was right at the pandemic. So then I decided to stay longer, and then after staying longer, it was like, well, we want to have a second kid, so let's just have it now before I go back to work and come back out. And then here we are, 5 years later. I'm still a stay-at-home mom, which I'm totally surprised by, but it's fulfilling in a different way. Yeah. That said, some days I feel like I want to go back to work, but it's like the struggle, right? The grass is always greener on the other side, I think. So finding this outlet of creating books and doing something that's not a mom thing is actually really interesting to me, and something I didn't foresee in my future if you ask 20-year-old me. But I'm
Give
pretty happy
yourself a
that
new
it was.
identity too, because I
Yeah,
think being a stay-at-home mom, you might feel a bit like identity lost, right? Because you're just a mom.
That,
And so I'm really glad that this project became something bigger than you
right.
probably expected or is continuing to grow. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Hmm.
So obviously writing a book, right? You have the idea, and then you mentioned about Adobe, Photoshop, and all that like illustration. But there's also other aspects as well. Could you kind of walk us through like how you navigate the campaign, right? You
Hmm.
mentioned the marketing and
Hmm.
then the publishing world. I mean, obviously very complicated. I'm not asking you to give us like a whole lesson on it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of share with us your experience and what you personally found, I guess, most challenging or like I guess like least interesting. And everybody's
Mhm.
different, right? Like in your
Right,
opinion.
right. Yeah. And I think on that note, something that I found was lucky for me is that since I'm a native speaker, I was able to find printers in China that and be able to speak with them and figure out kind of the finer details of things. Had I gone through, say, a third party in the middle, then there would be even more I wouldn't say complications, but there will be maybe more kind of like through the messenger type of work, the extra effort, right? I have to go through. So I think that was really lucky that I was able to do that and be able to kind of cut out that type of cost. But getting to there was certainly something I think I want to point out the fact that I didn't do it alone in a sense. I had all these moms help and being able to consult them and ask them for their experience and taking on their experience and then trying to figure out what works for me and then doing it along that way. So creating content and figure out writing the script was honestly probably the easiest part because it's just all me, right? And then finding friends and teacher friends who help me kind of grammatically make sure things are correct and all that. That was the fun part a little bit as well, just kind of chit chat with them and getting feedback. And then I think the other interesting thing is finding an illustrator. So myself, I don't illustrate. I wish I could, but finding an illustrator that will bring out the vision in my head was also a big part of the process for me. Um, I think I wanted to make sure that was something that I'm happy with, regardless of the cost. And yeah, just something that really brings my script to life and bringing kind of smiley faces to other people's content. So then finding that illustrator through both Instagram and through Fiverr and all these other websites was another whole process of trying to narrow it down, figure out process, figure out timeline, and then working with the illustrator. And luckily, I found one that really works for my theme, and she's so great. She's so responsive, and so it's just one of those things where I think you figure out the little details. A lot of it, I think, comes back to project managing and then figure out each little detail and then piecing them or separating them into different pieces and then slowly crossing them off and then going through down the line. Yeah. Um, I think the other thing is that creating your own book and not through a traditional publishing house, the good thing is that you have control of what you want to do, right? The good and bad thing is the good thing is that you have full control over what you want to do and you're running on your own timeline. No one to tell you, hey, you have to finish by tomorrow. Or like, I don't want to accept the script. So that's the great thing about being able to create your own thing. And I'm so fortunate to be able to do that. And with the support of the community and family and all that. So that was one thing that I think really helped. I guess hurdle, if anything, is when you think about it, it's just really feeling confident and not getting that imposter syndrome really coming in and stopping you from doing things. That was definitely one.
Yeah,
What
I
else?
think we all have that imposter syndrome. That's what I think that's everyone. I don't, it
Right.
doesn't matter how successful or how famous you are. I think it still creeps in that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, yeah, no, for
And
sure.
I read on your website, Little Bao, it represents your son, right? 小宝.
Yeah.
Because you want like a representation, like more like Asian boy in the
Right,
book.
right, right.
That's
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely. That was one of the other factors. Aside from not seeing these themes represented in bilingual books, also finding other boy characters in children's book was a hard thing for me to do. a lot of the books I realized when I was, finding books for him when he was little was that either it is girl, it's the girl that's the main person, or is an animal. And I'm just wondering, where are all the boys go? And it was very rare to find boys for some odd reason. I mean, now there's more and more slowly coming through, but back, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, I found out a lot of bilingual books, or a lot of children books, honestly, in general, the main person was often either a little girl or animal. And that, nothing's wrong with that, but I just wish there was more, and that included boys, and especially boys with long hair, which my sons both have. Yeah, and I think, that was one of the things that I was like, okay, let's make something special. It might be niche, but there are also other boys out there who have long hair, and I wish they could see themselves in books and find like, hey, that looks like me, and they're interested in reading and finding that it's something
more common now
normal,
too, actually.
right? I'm like, it's something that's normal, and I want them to feel normal about it and not have to always defend themselves and say, hey, I'm a boy. Just because I have long hair doesn't mean I'm a girl, right? And that's one of the other things. And I want to consistently keep that image in the books so that it's funny because sometimes people look at the book and they're like, oh, this is a girl. I'm like, I guess if you want to interpret it as a girl. That's cool.
Yeah, and just something I want to bring up, just hearing you share this story, back to what Lacey was saying about the market. You were sharing about the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I feel like, it's like, even though there are all so many bilingual board books now, but like what you created is different from anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, like you're creating Little Bao, as a boy, like represent your son. Like, I think the story behind each board book is different.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I think that's that to Lacey's point. Like the market is so so empty in a way that any ideas you can come up with, as long as you're passionate about it and have something that you feel strongly about it, then go and try and create it, right? Like a lot of Billy Bell books are more, I guess, informational for the most part, and they are more about teaching like different holidays, shapes, emotions, and things like that. But they're very text heavy, and so it fits a certain audience. It's great information, kind of like, I don't want to call it encyclopedia, but in a way that, right? Like it's very informational and it's great. And I have so many of them. And then the other side, like I was thinking about how my book's different, or what it does it offer the audience, is that my books are short text and they're repetitive, so that when kids, when you teach, let me back up. When I teach my kids, I think one of the important things is that repeatability, and being able to repeat in certain phrase over and over, then it really sits in their head and they kind of comprehend it and they retain it in their head. And especially with learning new languages, the more you practice it, the more you'll retain it, right? So for me, that was the thing that I felt my book offered, or I tried to offer through my book, being able to repeat certain simple phrases so that kids can actually pick it up and then remember it and be able to use it in daily life. So I think that was one thing that, helps me get back to the imposter syndrome. Helps me
you're
get over
different.
the imposter syndrome a little bit, in the sense that I'm not trying to be someone. I'm just being myself, doing something
Exactly.
I wanted to do that offers something different for the audience, right?
Yeah,
So
and you're gonna find your own audience, your
right,
own tribe,
exactly.
right? And then
Exactly.
the other moms, the other bilingual, they're gonna find their own tribe. It's like you're attracting, like we attract different people, right? And
Exactly.
not everybody gonna like us, and we're not gonna like everyone. So you just have to
Right.
find your own people, and
Right.
that's our free will.
Yeah. And
So
especially at the kids like developing different age, they're looking for different information. So anything to support them along the journey of becoming bilingual, that's kind of the ultimate goal, right? Having them interested in wanting to keep that up. That's really also what it is.
But and how boring it is if there's only vanilla ice cream flavor in this whole wide world. We need like 100 different ice cream flavor or different type of chocolate chips cookie, right? We don't just want tip tree. We want crumble. We want all different types to make it fun, so we can pick. Yeah. Where are you originally? Your cultural background, Helen?
Oh, I'm Chinese. So I was born in China, and I came to the States when I was 11. And so I've been now more in the States than in China. But yeah.
So 11. So you know how to read and write. You still remember?
The writing part is getting iffy.
Tricky.
If I have to, I will write. I think, it goes back to what I said earlier about practice. Not practice makes perfect, but practice helps you retain, right?
Yeah.
And the more you use something, the more you'll remember it. But the less you use it, then it goes away and disappear. And especially with language. I speak it a lot more now than I did maybe you asked me 10 years ago. So I think before I had kids, the only people I speak Chinese to are my parents. But once I had kids, having the idea that I'm wanting to make sure that they speak Chinese, I started to talk more Chinese at home. And my husband's ABC, so his Chinese are, iffy.
Broken.
But I would say since having kids and me I didn't force him, but forcing him to speak Chinese at home with the kids, his Chinese level has gotten so much better. Like even my parents were like, "Wow, your Chinese level is so much better now." And he's like, "Yeah."
Good training, Helen. I train you.
So not only teaching kids, but also teaching partner, right? So that's what I think. Yeah. But
Where
yeah,
are you
so I don't know. I don't write as much. If I have to, of course, I will write. But a lot of reading and writing for sure. I mean, reading and listening for sure. Yeah.
where are you guys at now? In the US, right? I assume.
Yeah. I'm in the Bay Area in the US.
The Bay Area. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of Asian, a lot of
A
Chinese.
lot of, yeah. Fortunately, a lot of Chinese, so then we can help the kids be kind of immersed in the environment and feel normal about speaking Chinese, right? I think that's the other thing we're all, in a way, very fortunate about is that in the recent years, I think bilingualism, not just with Chinese, but with any other language, right, has become more and more important in the States. Still not enough, but at least it's becoming more. I've been hearing more and more about immersion schools and things like that, like things I would have never heard 10 years ago. Now they're popping up everywhere and even in normal public elementary schools. So I think the kids are just fortunate to be able to live in a time where we're actually placing more emphasis on being bilingual and teaching them that as a skill. Yeah.
I'm curious about the campaign part because I know on Instagram stories, not just you, but other moms as well, or just authors in general, right? Like,
Right.
I'm just like curious in terms of if it has shifted or changed the family dynamic a little bit. Maybe that weekend outing, like from like let's go to the park to like, hey, mommy has this like a story time, or like we need to go set up this tent, and then you bring the whole family together because that would be a really unique experience for the. I don't know if you included them. Can you share with us how that has been?
Right. I think to your point about earlier, well, one of you asked me, I forget which one, asked me about if this is a hobby or is this my full-time job. I think that in itself and setting a goal of where you want this thing to be really affect how you approach it. For me personally, I want to make sure that I create more books, but I don't necessarily see myself dedicating every single weekend to like a booth life. Because for me, the balance is that being able to still attend kids' events because they have their own commitments, sports and music and whatnot. Like being able to attend those are also very important to me. So personally, for my business, if you will call it, I try to do minimal amount of weekend activities to try to promote it. Does it help with promoting? Maybe it's only like a handful, but it's not going to be as effective as someone who goes out somewhere every single weekend, right? But again, it goes back to like, what's your goal for the business? And how do you want to approach this process? So it's kind of a personal choice how you want to promote, and it will directly affect how effective your business grows. But again, like if you're comfortable with it growing slowly and steady and kind of like just baby steps, then that's fine. And if you wanted to exponentially grow, but then you have kind of like the lazy life where you are at an event every single weekend. But that said, I know her and Lulu are also, feeling the burnout as well. And we actually had this quick chat when we were at the LA Book Festival between myself and April. Or rather, April talked to Lulu and there was some, just kind of bonding over the fact that we're sacrificing weekend life, doing business work versus being with our kids. And I think, it's a hard balance with any working mom realistically, but especially mom who are trying to do things that are not traditional, which are like publishing children's book on our own, right? Especially all the self-publishers, because we have to do our own things and do all these weekend events and promoting and dedicating all this time on our phone or computer to doing social media work and etc. I think finding the balance and finding what's comfortable for you, the person who's doing it, is the key to figuring out how to go about all this. So just personally speaking, for me, I think the life that I envision for the business is a lot of it is that I still try to maintain it as it's a hobby. I wanted to be positive in the flow enough to create more books, but I don't necessarily see myself becoming a millionaire with this by any means. No
You
children's book
never
author
know.
honestly think that.
You never know, Helen. But I love
It's
your
very hard to make money with children's books, and that's okay.
your
It's
attitude though. I was just gonna say I love your attitude though. You're very positive.
mm,
And then you know what you're doing, and you're not. I think once you have that your goal and know what you want in your heart and in your mind, what is priority, what is second priority, then I think you won't be like disappointed or be
yeah,
like frustrated that maybe you didn't meet this month's goal or whatever. Because I mean, to you, your kids still your priority, and
right.
I totally agree. I get so excited to attend these little league baseball. I don't even watch sport. I grew up in Taipei, Taiwan, not playing sports, and my husband always make fun of me because I don't. Before my son, I don't even know. I know first base, second base, I know home run, but everything else, all the rules, I just don't know. And
Yeah.
ever since watching him play, and okay, this is a foul, this is a ball, okay, this is straight. I started learning more, and I think that's and it's for mom. I think most of the mom, that's what we enjoy, right? Just watching them grow.
No, I kind of to add to that, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure no mom really wants to miss any of these events,
Right.
But in effort to kind of create the vision they want for their little hobby or business, there are sacrifices they end up making, and it's just a matter of like, I don't know, actually making the sacrifice and willing to not do that sacrifice and be okay with it.
Be okay, because a lot will have mom guilt, right? Be okay with it, right? Because the guilt will eat you alive. The guilt.
Yeah,
The mom guilt.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think setting that goal for me actually helps because a lot of times when I see other folks at like weekend events, I would definitely feel the FOMO, like, oh, I wish I was there. Like, I think the audience that they're seeing will really like my book as well. But then having to kind of step back and talk myself out of that FOMO is remembering, like, okay, what's priority to me, and what am I okay with in terms of like my business in the moment, and what am I trying to do it for? And I think that's what's a good sort of grounding thing to kind of bring myself back and not feel the FOMO and go down that rabbit hole. Because there's definitely a lot of FOMO.
I love.
I know you have published like 3 books, right? I know you briefly talked about the first one, Mannerism. Could you share with just a little bit, not like spoiler or anything, right? But like, what's the second, third book? And then like, if you feel comfortable enough to share the 3 books that you are planning on publishing next year.
Yeah. So the first one is about the helping, and then the second one was about sharing. So learning how to share. That was one of the other important things for me. And I think timing wise, it worked out because that was when I was expecting or having my second when I wrote the book. And I wanted to make sure that my first one will accept that concept easier. And I purposely made it about food, which for him is a big thing because he loves to eat. I was really lucky with one of those kids who are not picky and loves to eat. So I try to use food as a way to talk about sharing, and I try to help them kind of understand that message and help other kids hopefully understand that message. And then the third one is about cleaning up. So another typical, but not typical, another simple task that we oftentimes want to teach our kids and not know how to use certain phrases and whatnot. So those are the first 3, and then the next 3 that I'm working on. It's a really exciting journey. I think always in the beginning, like seeing your script and then seeing the illustrator actually figuring out what you're looking for and then drawing it out and letting you see it is just a whole magical part.
It's your baby.
Part is the not exciting part because you have to figure out the nitty-gritty details and finance. Anyways, so those 3, the 3 that I'm working on. The first one is about being polite. I think one of the hidden things that I also try to put into my book without overburdening it is just about Chinese virtuals and being like kind of remembering those messages about like 孝敬 and being polite and 尊敬 and those kind of things. I don't want to make the books too like idea heavy, but at the same time I want to kind of subtly put those things in there so that it ingrains those in kids' mind and have that idea. So the one about polite will have something about being polite to elderlies on the bus and things like that, where like it's an idea planted very early in their head about how to respect other people. Right? What's the other thing? I'm always blinking when I'm rethinking about anything. The other one is about emotions, actually, and being able to express your emotions. Also, taking from experience of raising my own kids, I find that one of the ways to help them through their tantrums, which they have millions of every day, especially younger kids, since they don't know how to control their emotions yet, is being able to voice them and telling you how they're feeling and recognize that feeling and then telling you how they're feeling. So one of the things I wanted to make sure I can have a bilingual book about, that's just not sharing, that isn't just about sharing the wording for each thing, is actually showing them an example, right? Of like, oh, this is what it means to be happy. And then when you're happy, to kind of talk about that you're happy. Yeah. And then the third one,
Ready.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotion, and then no, you had a sharing already.
Being polite,
Polite.
sharing. I mean, not sharing. Emotion, and then hold on. I don't know what is about the third that I'm always forgetting.
I
Oh,
think
trying.
oh, okay.
Yeah, trying. And I think that's, again, like one of those struggles that us moms early on with younger kids always have, is having them feel comfortable enough to share and understand that trying something doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, and trying something, not liking something, doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. But the fact that you simply try, then they might find something great. So that's the third book message. Yeah.
Helen, how old are your kids?
Mine are 5, and then the other one's 2.5.
Okay.
So they're very much still younger. Yeah.
Mm. They must.
So that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration from. Like my daily struggles during the day, what makes me want to cry is what at night makes me feel like, oh, okay, I can write about that.
Yeah, right. Good idea. Right?
Yeah.
So 5-year-old, is he attending kindergarten next year, or he went this past year? Oh, so
he will be starting kindergarten in the fall. Yeah.
oh my god!
Yeah.
Moment.
It is. Thankfully he's very excited, and I think it helps that for the after school program he's going back to his preschool so that he can get more Chinese exposure. So he feels like maybe it's not too huge of a change. He'll be gone for a few hours in the morning to the new school full of people that he doesn't know, but at least in the afternoon he gets to go back to people that he knows.
So he's being attending preschool.
He's been
Okay.
He started attending school a year ago. Yeah. So it's for the primary 4 years of his life, he's stayed at home basically, and then just mostly speaking only Chinese. So I think I'm pretty confident with his Chinese level, and he's speaking more or less like a native speaker. Because I try to raise him like a
Wow.
that's
When
the
you
politest
speak,
way to put it, but
when you speak Mandarin to them, would you say like 90-100% of time?
Oh, 100%. I don't speak English.
Wow,
And I think that's the fortunate thing of being someone who is native speaker, right? So I can actually
wait. No, I'm native. I'm super native speaker, and sometimes it's hard, right? Trista, back me up.
No, it is definitely hard. There are definitely moments where I like stumble and I want to say something in English, but then I have to stop myself and be like, no, can't do it. Can't let them.
Yeah, your kids are much older too, because you did mention when your kids were younger, right? Before they attended kindergarten or first grade, they were basically like 100% Mandarin as well.
Yes,
Right?
yes. I'm saying me, like myself. I sometimes like I see myself sneak. I don't know.
Yeah, because your kids are older though,
Exactly.
and then with class,
I agree.
school activity and a term. So I'm talking
Right,
about like when your kids were.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Because
Right.
And I
now,
think, to your point, like once he starts kindergarten, I feel like that's one of those things where I will maybe start to struggle a little more, right? Because finding the terminology for some of the things they're talking about. I mean, even as a kinder, like talking about things and them bringing back more English, that's where I have to
yes,
sort of control him so that he doesn't influence little brother. Because then the life that little brother is living is different, right? Because he's not being fully just only Chinese for like the first 4 years of his life. He'll start to hear more English. The funny thing is, so my husband and I talk to each other in English. So it's not that they're not hearing it.
really.
They're just not communicating it. I mean, my big one is now in school a little bit, in preschool, because he goes to an immersion school that speaks Mandarin, English, and Spanish. And so he hears it. But I'm very glad that once he gets home, he knows to do the switch and he only talks to us in Mandarin. Yeah. So
I'm curious about the immersion school. There are 3 languages. How does that work?
Yeah, one of those things when I first signed him up, I was like, is this really going to actually do anything? Like the idea sounds great, but how much is he actually bringing home? So I would say, fortunately, the school that we put him in is really great and really focuses on education. I mean, they all do, but this one really focuses on education in terms of the language itself. So they learn a lot of Chinese like things that I wouldn't even think preschoolers would learn about. How do I even explain this? So, so his teacher is very old school in the sense that she doesn't just talk about like simple kindergarten things. She talked about kind of tying back to what I said about Chinese cultural and deeper meaning things like respect and learning like old Chinese phrases and things like that.
成语
Yeah, a lot of 成语, 自相矛盾. That's one of the things that they learn.
as a
And she
4,
comes back all the
5-year-old.
time. Right? Like I did not, like when she explained it to me, I was just thinking, interesting. How do you get them to comprehend that? And she actually has
Not
like
comprehension, it's more how
and
to
kind of talk about the story and they can explain it back. Yeah, it's so that's kind of the thing that I find very interesting and how
that's
it in a
curious.
way inspired me as well to think about the fact that yeah, they are only like 4 or 5 years old. But if you kind of message the thing the thing you're trying to teach them in a way that they can comprehend, then they will comprehend it. Like don't overthink it. They actually will understand, right? Like that's 自相矛盾. We hear, we're like, wow, that's deep stuff. But he would actually explain it back to me what it means because he was explained to in a simple way that he understands. So I think that was one of the powerful things about his school and his teacher, what inspired me, and then vice versa. It's like, oh, okay, like, that's maybe why I should simplify my message in my book so that it's like easy enough for them to really receive it and be able to take it back out. It's all about input, output, right? Like if you hear a lot in the same thing, then you're going to output the same stuff. So yeah. But yeah, the trilingual thing. So Chinese, I wasn't worried because I know a lot of teachers actually speak in Chinese when they teach them in class. But the Spanish part, I was like, okay, you only got one Spanish teacher there. How much do they actually, pick up and do? So they actually do, I think every other or 2 days a week, they do Spanish circle time and they actually sing Spanish songs and learn about Spanish like counting and all of that, simple phrasing, work week and stuff. But I was really surprised one day when he came home and he was counting to me in Spanish up to 50. And I was like, wait, what? Well, I know, but my husband didn't even know up till 20 and he was just counting and going on and on. I was like, wow, you actually really, comprehend it and remember it and you're brainwashed enough to remember this. But I think it goes back to the input output, right? Like since they're hearing it and immersed in that situation and being kind of raised in a way where they're interested in it, then they will pick it up. And when it effectively sort of repeated week on week on week on end, then they really will actually retain the information. But once they get out of that environment and there's no continuation, then like I'm guessing the Spanish part might fall off. So it will be up to me if I want to make that extra effort to teach them that on top of the Chinese. So we'll see. But in school, I think it actually does work if it is repeated weekly and not just a 1 hour a week thing. Like if it's 1 hour a week, I don't know if that's sufficient, but it is, more consistent. Yeah.
So would you say the main language, obvious, I guess, English, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they would have different sections, like, oh, this is Chinese time, this is Spanish time. Is that how it's being done?
Yeah.
Okay.
From how I see on their schedule, yeah. So they will have like chunks of morning time that's only Spanish or only Chinese, and then they rotate like throughout the day, half, and then they'll just rotate the language throughout the week. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really lucky, these kids. I wish I had that.
And then, so like one funny story to share is, so I speak my son is 4 years old, and then I would speak to him in Mandarin Chinese, and then now he just considers all language that don't sound like English as Chinese, so we would be out about, right? And then like he hears this language, I was like, oh, mommy, is that Chinese? No, I think that's Spanish. Even though I don't speak Spanish, but like Spanish, just like it just sounded like Spanish or like other languages. But I just wasn't sure if your son has like, I don't know, but for him he has English and then Chinese and then Spanish. I'm not sure if. Like, it's like, for me, I'm so curious how these kids comprehend languages, right? Obviously, can see the difference. But I just like the first time my son asked me that question, I was like, oh, that makes sense. But that's
a good question.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it goes back to the exposure piece and having to hear a lot of things. So the more they hear, the more habit. I forgot I have a similar story actually the other day. It wasn't that he asked me if it was Chinese, but he asked me like what language it was since he didn't recognize it. But he heard someone talking I think if it was German or French, that it was like someone was talking and he was just like listening and staring at them. So while I was telling him like, don't stare, it's kind of rude, he was like, okay, he looks away and he's like, what is they saying? I don't know what they're saying. And especially with my younger one, all that he's been exposed to is Chinese in terms of like speaking, right? So even when we're talking in English, if I'm talking to someone else out and about, he'll always be like, 他说什么?他说什么?他在说什么? And I was like, he's not talking to you. But that he recognizes a different language, and we try to also teach them that there's different parts of the world and people speak different languages. So you'll always hear different sounds, and you can, if you're curious, you can always ask like, what is that? And then you can ask about, and then as you explain to them, and more often they hear it, and they'll recognize that it's a different language and what type of language it is. And I think it helps with their potential interest and understanding that speaking different languages help you communicate with different people, and why it's such an important skill that we sometimes overlook, or we should look at more often and focus more important on, right? Because communication is an important thing. Yeah.
So assuming your children know about the books that you published, right? That you read with them as well. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just curious in terms of the 小帮手 and then the sharing and all of that. When you read it with them, do you, I mean, obviously sometimes more like, hey, we were reading a book, like just one of the books, or like more like, oh, you guys just fought that toy, you guys didn't know how to share. Let's pull this book out and then like use it almost like a lesson. I wonder, like maybe both, but like how do you utilize your books at home?
Yeah. No, I think that was totally spot on. That they definitely have fighting moments. They have 2 boys, so there's no peace in this house. So I'm always, to your point, like the same thing. Like I reference back to the book and I say, hey, do you remember in the book, what did we talk about? And then that was, and the funny thing is that the things that happen in the book, one of the things I was proud of when I was marketing the first book is that a lot of it is real life experience. So it's not things I'm making up in the air, right? It's just things that we actually I saw happen in my life with them, and I try to put into a book. So in terms of reminding them to look back at the book, it's not only about looking at what's in the book, but remembering what has happened before, and then getting them to really kind of bring that back and be like, oh yeah, the last time that this happened, we did this. So then this is like kind of a similar experience. How do we resolve that? And then I think finding that balance of letting them teach themselves without too much interruption, it's been a struggle in a way for me, because like I want to interrupt them and help them figure out their little arguments, but at the same time I'm like, oh wait, I need them to understand and figure it out for themselves. But having the books and having them kind of relook at it and look at those experiences that I previously had really helped. Yeah. And my son really loved seeing themselves in books. I mean, I guess he doesn't. And part of it is like going back to our point earlier about seeing yourselves in books, right? Not literally yourself, but at least seeing a character that's, Chinese or Asian, and then having long hair like you. Like it helps for them to be more interested in the content and really remembering the message. Yeah.
That is so
cool. Yeah. And then they'll probably, like, if they're at a book event with me, they'll be like, it's me.
That's me. They must be so proud of you, Helen.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is very rewarding in this whole process, is seeing that they are proud and giving them an idea that if they're passionate about something, then go and try and do it. Right? It doesn't necessarily always have to be about making money. Of course, making money helps, but like it's also about what do you want to put out into this world. And I think that's a bigger message that hopefully slowly but surely I can help them understand and retain.
How can you help others? How can you bring
how can you
more
help
goodness?
Others? How can you put out something useful to this world that's not just about making money, but also about teaching them certain values. Yeah.
And money will come. Once you have a good intention, it will come.
You're right. You are absolutely right. Yeah. And
hey, I wonder.
Pay more.
Yes. I wonder if like here in our elementary school for kindergartens, there is like a, what is it called? Mystery reader. But it's been a while for me. Yeah, so parents can go. So I don't know if for your elementary, that would be so cool. You bring your book, 小宝 Little Bao, and go in as a mystery reader and read it to all the kids,
Right,
in
right.
class, and I think that would be so cool. And I think your son will be like, hey, showing off to us his friend. That's my mom.
Yeah,
That's
that'll
my that
definitely be a
parent is
moment.
me.
It'll definitely be a moment for him for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
with him going into kindergarten, it would be such an interesting journey to see like what new routines and new things that come up. And I think it would inspire me to create maybe future books as well. So it'd be interesting learning. Interesting for him to see the transition. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. So for your goals, would you say you're gonna try and make more book every like you already planned 3 more books this year. Is it gonna be, I don't know, 6 more books next year? Like, or you have something in mind, or just one step at a time? You're gonna take it slow and see how it goes.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a half and half. So like there's things that I know topics I want to cover. So those things I will slowly push out as time allowed and as financially allowed. There is, aside from these board books, I also have this idea of picture books that I want to also eventually branch into now that I comprehend like how the book processing work. So these board books, as I was explaining earlier, are more meant for younger audience, right? And they have simple phrases. They're less about a storyline, but more about a theme and repeating that theme and having them understand the theme and really practicing that. But there is one picture book that I for sure want to make. I don't know if I'll get addicted and want to make more, but there's one I for sure want to make that's about my dad who passed away last year. But about him and his relationship with my boys. Yeah. So it's one of those things. I think it goes back to what I keep repeating myself. I feel like I'm repeating myself about doing something that means something to you. And
Yeah,
hopefully
please
it
keep
resonates with other people out
repeating
there,
that.
right? Yeah, I think finding books, especially about like Asian families that talk about relationship and talk about love, is rare, but starting to become more. But I still think it's rare, especially between male and male characters, right? So I want to actually somehow write it enough. It's like one of those things that's in my head that like I wanted to make that work, but then I don't know how to navigate it yet. But I want to make sure it's meaningful enough for me and for them to leave a legacy, but also leave for other kids out there who have a loving relationship with their grandparents. So yeah, so I think that's the other thing. Like I had these ideas of different types of books and different things that I want to create. It's a matter of being patient and finding the right timing that works for me and works for the finances and whatnot. It all ties back together to being able to control your own time and being a self-publisher. And I think that's what helps me on this little journey of like not feeling too anxious, but then feeling excited, then feeling like I want to do all these things, but then like, okay, hold on, calm down. Like let's do one step at a time.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of that.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I can do this. I get all excited.
Yeah, kind of all these things you want to do, but then you're like, hold on, calm down. Stop. Yeah. I think it's all the same. Lacey has the same thing. Like I always chat. I feel like I'm talking about her all the time, but we chat like almost every day. So I think I learned a lot from her little hustle and seeing what works for her, but taking lessons and figuring out what might not work for me, and and thinking about all that. But having that support of network between different mama authors really helped because we are obviously struggling with the similar, not necessarily exactly the same, but similar issues and supporting each other in this journey and pumping each other on.
Yeah, so important.
It really helps. Yeah,
that's so important because you could possibly avoid some mistakes if if you have some support and other moms that already been through it. Say, hey, make sure don't go there or don't do this. Kind of save you some time, and I think that's so important to support. You have that support group.
Absolutely. That's what keeps us going.
Yeah, and I can see you making that picture book next year. That's the next 2025 goal, okay?
That is, but we'll see. Hopefully I make it happen.
When you say that grandpa, your dad, and your son's relationship kind of remind me of that short film document Nai Wife because that's their relationship with the grandson. He was a director, right? And that's his relationship with his grandparent. It's just it's very special. And like you said, Helen, earlier, in the Asian culture, it's like that. 敬老尊贤孝顺, we have that I don't know, special bond with our. It also depends if you're very close or if they live close by or not, right? So
I think with that topic, right, it's like one of those things where it's a very important concept, but at the same time, sometimes it could be like also too serious where you don't have that closeness. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you can be very serious and like 敬老, but then you're like, oh, very respectful where you don't show the actual love. And I think in a younger kids, it's so much easier in a way because they don't overthink it, and then they actually do show that, right? So I think capturing all that is like a lot, but at the same time, like somehow I need to finesse it so that it can come through maybe.
Yeah, I feel like you have the big picture, like you kind of have a bird's eye view, but you just kind of like have to like put in the pieces, like one at a time, right? I feel like you have it together in your head. Yeah. Well, let's publish this 3 book first for this year, and then
exactly
next year,
one step at a time.
Yeah,
slowly but surely.
Yes.
That's kind of been the journey, and still going. Slowly but surely.
Helen, thank you so much for joining us today and then sharing your journey, your stories, your family, and then about your dad. I'm sorry, I know I got a little bit emotional there, but that's also what makes the forthcoming book, right, the picture book, even more meaningful. And then I know you will get there regardless the timeline, because it's so important to you and to your family as well. But so it's been a treat, and I really appreciate your time. Could you share with our audience where we can find you and your books?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I sell my books primarily through my own website, so CuriousLittleBao.com. You can also buy them directly from Instagram if you do Instagram checkout, or Facebook, but primarily through my website. I'm slowly trying to work to get to different bookstores, but it's also been a journey. So that's kind of where you can find me. Follow me on Instagram.
Will do. And then I'm sure Yao will put all the links in the show notes as well, for people who want to check it out. But thank you so much, Helen. We'll stay in touch for sure.
Thank you so much.
We'll stay in touch
for sure.
You too. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you'll get notification when we have a new episode. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. You can go to our show note to find the link. And if you love this episode, make sure you share with a friend and bring them to our community. And if you enjoy our podcast, please make sure you leave a review. Your review will mean so much to us. It will really help me and Trista keep going. All right, see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.